Hey, everybody, welcome. This is my show. I don't have a name for it technically, but we're just going to go with this. Justin Lethby. It's my vlog that we do on a weekly basis. This is Craig Grant. He is an amazing technology guy. He runs the Real Estate Technology Institute, does a lot of amazing things out there. Has been a successful technology trainer. I kind of aspire to be Craig to some degree because he does this so well and he's been doing it for so long that he's amazing. Today, what we are going to talk about is cybersecurity. This is safety month. We want to make sure we hit all those high points of what we need to do. But what we like to talk about is the tech side of safety, cybersecurity, digital assets, stuff like that we need to hit. We will, throughout the class, I'm a teacher too, throughout the session, we will throw out AI because, again, you can't avoid it. So, Craig, thank you. Welcome. Is there anything I possibly missed that you want to share?
No, not really. Just other than the fact that, again, we're going to work AI into this because, like you said, AI is really kind of getting its fingers into everything. And it's making anyone that's dealing with cybersecurity is having to pivot to keep up with what AI is now doing. So, like the same way anyone positive can use AI for great purposes, also cybercriminals and con artists are using it as well. So it's all about staying ahead of the game.
Yeah, precisely. So let's start off with that. Talk to us today. I'm assuming with modest changes through AI, but tell me what you are seeing right now for any industry, but specifically real estate, what you're seeing are the biggest threats realtors are having in the cybersecurity world.
Well, I mean, the biggest threat always is data, because cyber criminals love data. They specifically like one specific kind of data called PII, personally identifiable information. And in the real estate world, we come in contact and handle it on a regular basis. We're getting financial documents, we're getting, identification and all these things that are extremely valuable to cyber criminals to sell on the dark web. So, like anytime I teach cybersecurity, I always talk about how the real estate professional has to kind of lock down themselves first, because the typical real estate professional has almost no training and no awareness of how much a target they are. And anything I teach in a class or an event is pretty basic things you can do, such as making sure you have proper antivirus security on every single device, which most people don't do. Making sure you have much stronger, unique passwords on every single account and using multi-factor authentication, like just basic things that, if you just do a Google search, it'll tell you exactly what to do with all these things. But the average real estate professional doesn't do it. And therefore, I always say as a normal consumer, you have a target on your back. As a real estate professional, you have a bullseye, because the criminals come after us because of all the data. But nothing I teach is overly geeky. It's just normal things that anybody should be doing that the typical risk professional is not doing on a regular basis.
No, and I absolutely agree with that. So, I mean, it's funny, two things. Just before I got started here, I was on one of my websites because I was getting ready to add some new courseware, and it forced me to stop and log out to set up multi-factor authentication, which just made me laugh. I'm like, okay, perfect timing. I'm getting ready to do an interview, and this is happening. But the other thing that I tell most people all times, because again, while super geeky stuff will obviously work, we're real estate professionals. We don't have time to worry about all that stuff, and our brains don't work that way. So I tell everybody, really, as long as you take a pause and use your brain, and your brain is smart enough to recognize this stuff, you will succeed 90% of the time.
Absolutely. Because what I always say is, like, if a cyber criminal or hacker wants you, they're going to get you no matter what you put in place. Like, a good hacker can break into anything. The whole purpose of cybersecurity is slowing them down. Like, because again, if they want you, if they're going to invest enough time and energy, they're going to get into, I don't care if you're a Fortune 500 CEO or a celebrity, they're going to get into your stuff, right? But it's about slowing them down. And the typical real estate professional is not a celebrity. They're not a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. They're not a government employee. So a cyber criminal is not going to invest hours and weeks into you. So if you just do basic security measures to slow them down as much as possible, encrypting documents and stuff like that, which is easy to do, they're not going to invest the time into little old you. They're going to go after the major. They'll invest that time into a celebrity, a political figure, stuff like that. They're not going to lift your fingerprints off of your coffee mug, right? As a normal person.
Correct, right? I mean, those are the things that we don't got to worry about. But again, we make ourselves vulnerable because we throw ourselves on social medias and we
Oh,
look like we're all $1 million agents and we work with $1 million clients. So that data becomes enticing to all the bad folks, which is what I mean, we shouldn't be necessarily advertising, but we should be presenting a successful front, which does make us definitely a pinpoint and a focus for a lot of bad
yeah.
actors out there.
Yeah, but the other thing, just to kind of address that though, is yes, the luxury agents are obviously a bigger target to a cyber criminal, but these days cyber criminals don't care about the price point of a property. They don't care about the size of your company. They'll go after the $49,000 piece of vacant land as much as they'll go after the $5.2 million property.
Right.
And the biggest reason they actually are now starting to really focus on lower end property is they don't want the government's like power involved. Like, and once it hits the $50,000 mark, now there's possibility FBI is involved, and they have way more resources than typical local law enforcement has. So a lot of times, cyber criminals are going after low end stuff. They're going after small independent firms and low end listings just so they don't ever have to worry about the government.
So let's hit on that because I think that's a solid point. So how are they going after this, right? I mean, what are the techniques, the tools that they are using to breach our PII?
So, I mean, the three biggest scams that target the real estate world are listing scams, wire transfer fraud, and ransomware. So, and to kind of explain those, so starting with ransomware is, and this happens to normal consumers on a regular basis as well. It's just where you accidentally click on the wrong link, you go to the wrong website or whatever, and that allows the cybercriminal to install malware into your device, or if it's connected to a network, it'll infect the entire network and start getting everything connected to the network. And then they lock you out and basically say, we're holding you ransom. You have to pay us a bunch of money to get your device back or to get your network so your company can function. And there's major money in ransomware. So that's really about, and you talked about it earlier, just slowing down and paying attention and being very careful what you click on these days. I would say if you don't know a link is 100% trustworthy, you don't even think about it. You go to the browser and you go to the website. If you have to search for the website, search for the website. But links these days, unless you pay attention, you have no idea what's a safe link and what's not a safe link, because it's very easy to make a link look like a certain link and not really be it. I mean, they can change an I to a 1, they can misspell a word just very minorly so you don't notice it. So clicking is what really gets most people in trouble these days, whether it's in an email, text message, a WhatsApp, whatever it might be. But it's slowing down and thinking and being really careful where you click on it. So that's the main way, ransomware. And the only way to defend yourself against ransomware, by the way, is everything should be backed up 24 hours a day in the cloud. Like, not just on a hard drive in your property. You got to be backed up somewhere else where it's safe and secure. And if your computer gets ransomware and your computer's toast, you got to go buy a new computer. Okay, you're out the money for a new computer, but at least your files and your data are secure somewhere else. So that's ransomware. With wire transfer fraud, that's the biggest threat to me to the real estate world, because that's where they're intercepting a transaction, right? And typically that's usually not on the realtor side. It's usually on, let's say, the title or the mortgage company or the escrow company or the real estate attorney you're using, where their accounts get breached, like their email accounts, whatever. And then a cyber criminal can then send an email that looks like they're from the title company, tricking the buyer into clicking and wiring money into a fraudulent account. And honestly, the best defense against that one is educating your customers from day one about it. Like, you need to, as a real estate professional, terrify your buyers the first day you work with them. Seriously, you got to put the fear of life into them and say, this is how it works. I would destroy your life if you click on the wrong link and wire the money. Like, when it comes to that, you got to educate them and scare them and make sure they understand they have to triple check everything before they send funds. Like, they should be talking to an actual human being, walking them through the transaction and make sure they really know they're talking to the right people, not somebody claiming they're Mike from the title company. Right. So it's a huge education piece, because and by the way, realtors should never be involved in providing wire transferring instructions. But even though we're not involved, we get sued regardless if it happens. like, because both the buyer and the seller, the transaction gets blown up, even if the money does not get lost. Because again, there's an investigation, it slows it all down. So constant education and making sure your buyer doesn't fall for this is really the biggest thing with wire transfer fraud, right? You want to indemnify yourself as much as you can, educate them, getting in writing you're doing it, have them sign a contract saying you've explained wire transfer to them, because it could destroy the customer's life and your life very easily. And the third one would be listing scams. These happen everywhere, but they especially happen in any market that's kind of prone to vacation rentals or short-term rentals.
Oh
And that's
yeah.
oh yeah, and that's where a con artist will put a listing up on a site like Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, really any free classified site they can find. They'll post a property on there as a rental, even if it was never a rental or not. And then they will literally, like, put it up there as a ridiculously low price, like at least half of the normal price for that market, to make it sound extremely, like you got to get this deal. And then they're going to trick somebody into paying a deposit for a property that, again, is your listing, not the frauds. And the only way to really combat that is, well, there's two. One is you can create Google alerts for every single listing, and that would hopefully notify you as soon as a listing gets up on a site like Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, and do as much as you can to get it taken down fast. The problem is these sites, a single report doesn't get a listing taken down. You got to get a bunch of people reporting the listing is fraudulent. So you got to usually blast out to all your friends, please help me get this listing taken off of Craigslist, because
Right.
it's a numbers game, right? But there is, and this is something that a typical realtor can't do. It's more about if you're MLS partners with a company like this. But for example, there's a new vendor that I've been kind of looking into working with called Property Shield. They integrate with the MLS. So of course, this would be something your MLS would have to purchase. But they're using artificial intelligence to scan the internet, looking for additional instances of a property and any inconsistency with it. So they're looking for, is the phone number different? Did they change the photos in any way? Is that listing on your website the exact same display of the listing on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist or any of these places? And then they use some pretty impressive technology to get it taken down right away. So where they're literally reporting that listing like 80 different times to different IPs in the areas, that way it gets taken down fast. So again, that's what a realtor can do. It's more of an MLS integration, but that's to me the best thing I've seen so far. They're proactively looking for listing scams and getting them taken down.
I love the Google alerts, right? I forgot about that one. That one I think is one of the simplest ways, because again, as long as you type that address in, and you just got to be address. Who cares if you get a couple that are in a different state? Just be street number, street address, street name.
Yep.
Done.
Yeah.
Because who cares if I live in Illinois and I get one in Texas or I get one in New England? I don't care.
Exactly. And the thing with the Google alert, let's say you create one for all your 25 listings you've ever had, right? You're not going to get 25 emails a day. You only get a Google alert email notification if something hits that day about a certain property. So if you're just getting one or two of these a day and you quickly eyeball that email and you're like, wait, I didn't put it on Craigslist. Now, you got to go deal with it fast. Right.
Right. And the other thing that always fascinates me is this is recircling. Now, what you've said is true, right? It's more vacation homes than other homes. But I remember it in 2007, 2008, 2009 with all these distressed homes, right? Someone had it listed and now they'd put it for rent. I had a client who was, they wanted the dream rental on a penny budget, right? And they'd find them because Craigslist had all of them, right?
Yeah,
and
the deal.
It was a bad situation. I had a client all the time. They're going, we got to see this property. It's not listed. Not listed. Well, I'm talking to him. I said, do not.
Right. Do not engage.
Continue the conversation. Do not give them any money. You will not see that money. This home is foreclosed. They cannot rent this out. And I don't know if they did it because that's essentially when they stopped talking to me because they didn't like my answer. I'm hoping they did not.
I've run into some absolute disasters, speaking around the country on this topic. Like I ran into one woman, this is about a year and a half ago. She had one property. They scammed 34 different people out of a deposit on. Like, because she had no idea what was happening until it was literally a mess on her doorstep with 34 different people yelling at her, wanting to sue her and everything. Right. And I've run into so many cases of, by the way, it's not just rental, like vacation rentals. They love also any vacated property.
Right.
So let's say a listing is on the market actively as a sale, but it's vacated, and the con artist knows that, they'll actually have someone sign an agreement. They'll then go and break into the property, and if they need to, they'll cut off your lockbox and move that person in. And now they have squatters' rights. Good luck getting them out because they have a signed rental agreement and they believe they have legal right to be inside that property. And now it's a
Right.
legal mess trying to get them out, right? So the whole key is knowing about the scam as soon as they start. That's why the Google alerts is so important. Or again, if your MLS can look into a tool like Property Shield, it's even more proactive than Google Alert.
No, the Property Shield's a nice, definitely addition. But no matter if you get that or not, you should always do your own diligence because it's your clients,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
you should be protecting them. Because one of the things I always tell everybody, I was literally doing a presentation 3 weeks ago on cybersecurity, and the problem is cybersecurity is not only for yourself, but it's for your clients. Because if you don't protect your clients' information, not only have you lost their information, but you've lost their trust.
Yes.
And that's, to me, is the biggest part of this. So we
And
want to
more
make sure we
importantly, and it's bigger than that, because then you if it gets out, you lose the community's trust, and that can ruin your entire company's reputation forever. It really can.
100%. So with that being said, I would agree 100%. You know, you've got ransomware. Basically, you got phishing is what you're talking about with wire fraud. And then the land one, or the rental, the land, the listings is fascinating. But I want to delve a little bit deeper into this because since a year ago, December, an amazing technology came into play.
Right.
It made all of our lives so much easier. It's called AI. And we have tools like ChatGPT. We've got Gemini. We've got Copilot and 100,000 different tools that do very similar things that make all our lives easier. But the challenge is it also makes the bad guys' challenge easier, right? So walk us through what we used to teach as cybersecurity professionals and why that's not working anymore.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's, again, you have to understand what the bad guys are doing and you've got to adopt with it, right? So, for example, you talk about phishing. You go back 2-3 years ago, and when I would teach how to identify a phishing message, such as a sneaky email or text, I would say look at 3 different things. You always look at the header information, who the sender is, the phone number, the email address of the sender, right? You always look at, but don't click on links. Make sure it's the real link, not a disguised shortened link or anything like that. Or did they maybe change the spelling in the URL? And then the third thing I used to teach was look at things like spelling and grammar, because a lot of these messages were coming from outside of America. They would try to sound American and usually fail miserably at it. So you could just pick up on, oh, that doesn't even sound right, right? But now the cybercriminals are using a tool like ChatGPT or some of the other ones you mentioned and making sure those messages sound extremely realistic, right? So you can no longer rely on things like spelling and grammar or just doesn't sound right the way you used to, because now they're writing them perfectly, right? So you still got to look at the links, but not click. You still got to look at the header information, but you can no longer rely on just does it sound right or look right? Like, because again, they're using the same tools. And then there's certain things. AI has opened up so many new areas. I don't want to say they're new areas. These areas were already there, but now they're doing them so much better because of AI. So, for example, one of the biggest things that's happening in the cybersecurity world is, like, you can kind of con somebody in so many different ways using people's identities. So, for example, if I wanted to take Justin down, I can create an avatar him in 2 seconds, right? And I can do it to anybody. And anybody can do this now. It's not just like you have to be a very talented geek to do this. The sad reality is all it takes to create an avatar now is 2 pictures of a person's face, left facing and right facing. If we have more than 2 pictures of their face, which, by the way, your social media accounts give us way more than that, right? It'll be a way more realistic and more natural face than 2 pictures would be kind of robotic, right? All you need to synthesize somebody's voice is 10 seconds of speech of their voice. That's it. And again, I was going to joke around with my classes. I'm like, is there a single person in this room that's never posted video online speaking? And maybe one person will put their hand up, and I'm like, cool, but you have a voicemail message, right? So all they need is 10 seconds of you speaking to do your voice. So you're hearing all kinds of scams now of fake kidnappings of children, fake calls from what you think is your grandkid in jail needing bail money, right? Um, and you're starting to see it seep into the real estate world as well of fake transactions. Like now they're calling as the title person, syncing the title person's voice, right? So you got to adopt to this and understand it's very easy to change someone's identity or duplicate their identity. And you got to be extra, extra careful when you do stuff. Like from a family parenting standpoint, every family at this point should have secret passwords where you don't say the trigger word. I know it's not you being kidnapped, kind of a deal, right? And in a real estate transaction, like there's got to be way more steps involved before you wire money or do anything like that, because it's becoming so easy to, again, just take someone's voice, take their face, and fully duplicate that. And by the way, there's even a few speakers in our industry out there teaching how to defend yourself from this. There's no such thing. There is no defense against a deep fake avatar because anybody could do it to anybody, right? There is one big project that's being worked on right now. All the major tech companies have signed on to create a new protocol where it'll almost be like it'll have a fingerprint or something like that built into content to know, was it created by AI or was it created by a human, right? But until that becomes the normal thing, like you basically just have to be extra, extra cautious because the cybercriminals are using these tools like crazy now.
Well, and I do like and it was always coming, right? AI is going to detect AI, and that's always going to come. It's going to happen at some point in time. It's not here yet. But my always problem with that solution is false positives and false negatives, right? So you can't even rely on that. Again, for me, it's always us, right? We have to use our intelligence. We have to use our smarts because, well, there's, the bad guys are smart. They're probably not smarter than us, but they're really smart. But I laugh, Craig, because now we do talk, but we probably haven't talked in 6 months, probably, if not longer. My favorite thing to teach right now, you said it without being prompted, is passphrases.
Yeah.
Because again, we're back to being 5 years old. If someone comes and says, we're going to pick you up, if I don't say Volkswagen, then I don't go in the car, right? It's the same thing now. If we don't say Craig is awesome, then I don't give you money, right? Yep. That's what we do.
Yeah.
To your point, I love the fact that you said this because a friend of mine in the real estate business, their mother got called from their granddaughter, the police anyways, saying that they just got arrested for a DUI and they need money because, and they didn't go to the mother because they'll talk to her, but not right now, just need to get out.
Sure.
And luckily that grandma was smart enough to realize I'm going to call anyways. So they called and said, no,
I don't care if you're going to get in trouble. I'm calling.
Right.
Yeah.
She said, no, she's sitting right here. It's like, so it's very sophisticated because this sounds, to your point, just like them. Now, I try not to scare everybody, but by the time I'm sure Craig gets the same thing, by the time we get done going, we're like, it's not that big of a deal. Everybody goes, yeah, you just scared the life out of me.
Yeah.
It's not that big of a deal because if we do practice, it's there. And Craig and myself are probably more at risk for AI deep fake hacks than the average bird because we're here a lot.
This podcast right now makes us bigger than the average person, right? Because we're talking for 30-something minutes of us talking. Our faces, they get everything they need just out of this video. So yeah, we're definitely more vulnerable to stuff like this. But again, I don't care if you're just a regular person who rarely does social media. Everyone is a target these days because there's so much content of us on the internet. So when I teach this topic, my goal is to scare you into action. Like usually I'm trying to be happy and fun when I'm teaching. When it's cybersecurity, it's you got to get off your butt and do things because like you can't just sit back and hope it doesn't happen because it'll happen if you don't do something proactive.
So my favorite analogy always is this, and I go through different things. I do the bad campers joke, and I also do the club. You remember the club in the car?
Yep, you've told me that one.
So I love the club because I think it's a perfect example because the club was not safe, but it was a visual deterrent.
Yep.
Right. So that's all we're trying to do here with you guys today is make it harder so they want someone else. Not you, not your clients, not someone else. So you've mentioned a few tools already, right? You said backing up, you've said various tools. Let's review in just a simple format here before we end this, some of the best techniques, tools that you recommend, just kind of to end so we can give them something that they can focus on from a positive perspective.
Absolutely. So, I mean, first, the basics. Every device should have proper antivirus protection. So I typically give out a Avast or Malwarebytes, a couple others that are excellent antiviruses that can protect phones, tablets, computers, any device you have. So I would say get a package that supports every device in your household, not just your computers. You got to protect everything. So antivirus is the first piece, and more importantly, get the antivirus suites, which is like the bigger package that company will sell you, which includes tools like a VPN to protect you when you're outside your home on the internet using networks and stuff like that. A lot of them will scan all your software for updates. So get a good antivirus suite that gives you full protection, not just scanning. The second piece is, so again, antivirus with a VPN. Second piece, proper password protection is huge. Every single account you have should have a different unique password. Now, there are a lot of tools out there called password managers you could use to help you with this, but you'll understand if you ever come to my classes, I don't ever recommend a password manager because they're almost all of them have been breached at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And if somehow you found one that hasn't been hacked yet, it will be, right? Because the hackers know they're gold mines. I typically teach a technique that allows you to have unique hard passwords without having to really stress your brain. And you can look it up. There's tons of other people online that teach proper password techniques, but it can't just be you're changing an I to a 1 or slapping a $sign at the end of your passwords. Hackers are way too smart for that. Okay. But every account should have unique passwords. Trying to think what else they can implement. Always have everything up to date. Do anytime you have updates on your operating system or software, always do them, especially security ones, because that's a major way cybercriminals can get you when you're out of date, not doing those updates. And then to me, again, one huge one we haven't talked about is having the proper insurance. So most realtors are under the assumption their E&O insurance will help them if they ever have a cyber incident. And the reality is it doesn't cover one penny, right? So there's a separate line of insurance called cyber liability insurance. It's not very expensive, but could literally be the difference between your business surviving or basically being put out of business is having that kind of insurance. And a lot of agents think, oh, my company has it, I'm covered. Not typically, right? Typically, it's at the agent level you have to do it unless your broker's bought in full umbrella coverage. So again, a lot of realtors think they're covered and they're not. For wire transfer, ransomware, any of these things, having that insurance is a huge, huge deal these days.
Yeah, and I think you nailed, one of the biggest points, because a couple of years ago, we were at an NAR conference, and there was a cybersecurity specialist out there who didn't understand E&O and could not explain to us as realtors why they couldn't count on that.
Right.
And you can't, right? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's one out at a point in time, but I have not heard of one yet that says, yes, we're covering cybersecurity hacks, vulnerabilities. No. It's too much. It's too big.
It's a totally separate line of insurance.
Right.
So they flat out will not include it at all, not 1 cent, for any kind of cyber incident you may have. And by the way, cyber liability insurance also covers things like government liability, such as copyright violations. Right. So if you get sued for using the wrong picture on your website, it doesn't cover that. Cyber insurance does. It covers a lot of things, but I mean, again, the typical real estate professional thinks they're covered with or they think their company has them covered with cyber liability, and most of the times you're not. So it is definitely, again, it's not very expensive. Most of the same vendors that offer offer it as a separate line that you can add on. But it is absolutely worth looking into. Oh, and by the way, one other thing that I should have mentioned of the basics of security, other than the antivirus and make sure everything's up to date and passwords, is encryption. So encryption is so easy to do and it's free, but a typical real estate professional does not encrypt their client documents that have PII in them. At a minimum, any customer document should be encrypted with a password and locked down. Right? It's free. It takes 2 seconds, but again, it slows a cyber criminal down let's say they get onto your device. If those client documents are encrypted, could they break it? Yeah, but it's going to take them a long time to do so, right? And it slows them down.
Yeah, we didn't even go into quantum computing, and that's a whole different conversation that we don't need to go into now. But it does that's why encryption is important, because that term right there will make some of that vulnerable down the road easier to hack.
Right.
The one thing that I will let on that I always been telling people lately is you also need to know your state laws, because again, we can't tell you how, because there's no such thing as perfect protection.
Right.
It's just better than everybody else.
Yep.
So if you do get hacked, you also need to know your state laws on what your requirements is for identifying to your clients and customers what has been and how it's been hacked. Every state has them to some degree.
Yep.
And every state's a little bit different. So,
and by the way, that's actually a horrible aspect of what's called breach notification. The way breach notification laws work, it's not where your business operates, it's where consumers reside. So let's say you're operating in, Illinois, right? And you have customers in your database that live in Missouri, live in Ohio, and all these other states. You have to notify them as well based on what their state laws are. So it's not just learning your own state. But by the way, that's another thing that cyber liability insurance covers, is helping you basically understand all 50 states and getting it out. Like, you have a legal representative, you have PR, you have a forensic expert that can help you figure out exactly what happened and how bad it is, and a security expert included in your insurance.
No, and I think that's great. Again, I think that all promotes one key concept: look into, evaluate, and get cybersecurity insurance, because it is, unfortunately, it's a need in today's world.
It is.
So it's an expense for sure, but the money that you will save, because again, there is no such thing as perfect. It's just good for now, and we got to move forward. So, well, with that, Craig, I do appreciate that. Was a wealth of information. Any last nugget that you thought of that we didn't share? A question I didn't ask that you really said, Justin, how did you not say this?
No, I don't think so. I think we hit the major stuff. I mean, I guess the only thing, again, when I teach this topic, it's all about scaring you into action, right?
I do the same thing.
And nothing that I teach and you teach about this topic is overly geeky, where you have to bring in, you have to hire the geek squad to come in and do things for you. It's all very easy to do stuff, but the typical person doesn't do it. But every little layer you go home and implement makes it less likely. Because again, the typical cyber criminal is not going to invest time into you, because you're a normal person. You're not a celebrity. You're not a government employee or anything like that. They're not going to invest a ton of time. So it's all about slowing them down with little steps.
Yep. I love it. I love it. Well, thank you, Craig. I appreciate your time. I think this was extremely valuable. I'm going to give you one last shot. If you want to prompt anything I have in the banner, quoting your website. But if you want to push any classes you got coming up, virtual, whatever, this is your shot.
I don't need to promote classes. I'm all over the place, but I mean, check your area's calendars for those. But I will quickly promote the RETI site. So in the little bar going across is my page on the site, like kind of my bio page that has my schedule and all that on there, my classes. But you may, if you need help learning about real estate technology, marketing, cybersecurity, AI, or anything like that, you might want to check out the RETI site. First of all, every single Wednesday at 4:00 Eastern, me and my team do free webinars every single week. So you can attend as many of those as you want. If you can't catch them on Wednesdays, you usually have them on the site by the next day, and you have a week to watch them on replay if you're not a member. But if you're a member of the site, which is not very expensive, you can have access to our entire library of over 3,000 instructional videos and product reviews and webinars and a lot more to help you understand how to do real estate with tech.
Awesome. I think it's great. I love your website. I love all the trainings you do. I am pretty much the big old nerd in the room. You're bigger than me, but I still love
my friend. You and me both.
I love the webinars. I say attend them, do what you can, get your knowledge set up. My philosophy always is master one thing, move on to the next. And Craig is a great resource for helping you master the topic at need. So attend their stuff. They're great people. With that being said, thank you, Craig, and we'll see you at the next training, folks.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.